Good afternoon. Um, I think I was thinking, what should I talk about today? I think the most important thing is to focus why the Iraq Revolution started on October 1st. Why didn't it start before? Why all these years of mayhem and oppression in Iraq has not resulted in a meaningful, massive protest all over the country. But there are several tactical reasons and strategic reasons. But all these things wouldn't happen without the maximum pressure policy. The maximum pressure policy by President Trump have weakened the mullahs in Tehran and deprived the militias in Iraq and their proxies of funding. I tell people in Iraq, the mullahs really likes dollar more than the Mahdi, and they likes dollar more than al-Hussein because dollar makes them going. And Qasem Soleimani, when he sits down with an Iraqi official, a bunch of Iraqi officials, he has in the trunk of his car bags of money and few roadside bombs. If you go with him, he will give you the money. If you don't go with him, he will plant an IED for you and he blows you. So his strategy was based on that. The American diplomats obviously do not have this capability. That's why they don't produce very good results and very quickly. I myself lived three worlds. First of all, I served in the Iraqi army from 80 to 85, to be more specific, in the Iraqi Air Force, fighting against Iran. By the way, every time I mention Iran and Iranians, I don't mean the Iranian people. We love the Iranian people. We're talking about the regime of Iran. So this war was, I call it the meaningless war. It lasted 8 years. I served. I almost died several times. I lost 4 of my closest cousins. Then I was arrested by Iraqi intelligence in 87 and tortured, and I fled to the United States, got my freedom, went to Georgia Tech and studied here in school. And I joined the Iraqi opposition. So I said, after 8 years of war, maybe it's time for us to reconcile with this regime in Tehran and make up some sort of peaceful accord that will make us live across the borders in a peaceful way. Specifically, the Iranian people, we have relations of marriage, cultural, even the food, and not to mention millions of religious pilgrims every year. So that leads us to the 2003 war. I was the head of the Iraqi opposition party, office in Washington, D.C. from 2003, and I was liaison with the Pentagon and training of Iraqis and with the White House then, and we overthrew Saddam with the help of the United States. And the whole thing was based on a coalition between the Kurds and the Shia Islamic parties. And this coalition immediately collapsed right after the fall of Saddam, because there's only one common thing that brings those people together, is the hatred of Saddam. The Kurds are secular, and the Shia Islamist parties are very much loyal to Iran. And in spite of their promises, when they come back to Iraq, they want to be patriotic. They turn to be completely proxies of Iran. And that was the biggest problem from the beginning. That's why the system never worked. Now, those people look at Iraq as a portion or a part of an Islamic republic based in Tehran, just like Istana with the Ottomans, and their loyalty is answerable to Tehran. As we used to say in Iraq, the communists, when it rains in Moscow, they carry umbrellas in Baghdad. Those people, when it rains in Tehran, they carry umbrellas in Baghdad. And they started to feel that they have to pay to the central government, to Khamenei, to keep this Islamic republic going. In 2013, there was a big turn because Khamenei met with several Iraqi Shia officials. He summoned them to Tehran and told them, we spent $11 billion in Syria. From now on, you have to take the burden of the spending. So Iran started to use corruption money in Iraq. By laundering the money, they could take 20 to 40% of this laundered money as a cut to their expenses And Qasim Soleimani became an actor to empower corruption in Iraq, because corruption means funding to their operations. And they started increasingly becoming more reliant on milking Iraqi resources. Now, why the revolution happened? The revolution happened as a result of demonstrations by millennials in Iraq, people who were born in the 2000s, couple of years before, couple of years after. And those people, one feature that's different from me, my generation, and the generations before me, they have not lived under Saddam Hussein. They have lived under freedom, with complete openness to the outside world, and at the same time under severe violence and car bombs and terrorism. So they are free-minded and also fearless. Why in 2019 they started the revolution? Because this is when they started to walk. They became old enough to go out to the streets. And people, the older generation, especially the Islamists, ridiculed them. And they called them the Babchi generation, because they use, there's a game, it's called Babchi. Believe it or not, of all important things in Iraq, Iraqi parliament made a law to ban the Babchi game. Just like when Stalin banned jazz in the 1950s. So this Babchi generation turned to be the most vicious, and they were outside demonstrating, and immediately the militias started, and Qasim Soleimani organized a plan to use snipers to kill them openly, and they killed many hundreds of them. And in spite of these killings, those people continue to come out and continue to do it. A couple of days ago, I got a call from Nasiriyah. They told me Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis' funeral came back from Iran, and the militias want to take him through the southern city of Nasiriyah for his funeral. And the people of Nasiriyah called me, the demonstrators, and they said, "Sir, we blocked the streets, and it would be a massacre, but they were not going to pass over our dead bodies." And they failed to pass. And about 10 demonstrators were killed with machine guns, and then they had to take Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis back to Basra and fly him to Najaf. So this revolution has proven its unbelievable determination. The other thing, the Shia establishment has relied on what they call it marja'iyah, which is basically the clerics in Najaf and Qom, of course. And the clerics in Najaf, their job historically is to protect the Shia popular. They are the protector of the Shia interest and their well-being. They even have edicts that support rising against oppressive government, because the oppressive government may lead to the killing of the Shia. This establishment after 2003, which has never been used or never tested or experimented becoming part of the power. They were always outside the power. They have their own budget. They have their own donations. They have their own way of edicts, and they schools in Najaf. And they are very, very well deep-rooted in the Shia culture. They became part of the 2003 government, and then they became part of the corruption of the 2003 government. So from being a protector to the people for many, many hundreds of years, they became part of the corruption. And Ayatollah Sistani, he's a very old man. His son is very corrupt, and the establishment around him all involved in corruption. And they have endorsed many ministers and governments that turned to be very corrupt and counterproductive. And they are now between two fires. If they admit they were part of the corruption, is bad. If they don't admit it, not to mention the coercion that comes on the Marja'iyah and Najaf from Tehran. And that led to that this generation does not feel the respect of previous generations to the Marja'iyah and Najaf. For Muqtada Sadr, his father was Ayatollah Muhammad Sadr, which was killed in 1998. Also, people did not see Muhammad Sadr. So his son Muqtada, very corrupt, part of this corrupt government. He has 7 ministers in the government, and he claimed to be anti-corruption. And so he lost respect. Al-Hakim, prominent family. So this generation is a very, very unique generation, and it has created this When this revolution started, Khamenei was very, very uncomfortable about the events, because he came out in a tweet and said, the Iranian people and the Iraqi people are united by the blood of Hussein, which is the grandson of Muhammad, he was killed in Iraq, and it's a long story. And the very same day to his tweet, demonstrators in Karbala went and burned the Iranian consulate in Karbala, which is where Al-Hussein Shrine located. That was a very strong answer. Even President Trump retweeted the burning of the Karbala consulate, and they went, and about 27 people were killed in the burning. They went back again and burned it second time, and third time, and fourth time, and fifth time. So this is a groundbreaking situation where you have a very strong Shia-held populace now who are anti-Iran mullahs, and it's not going to change. I can guarantee you now, you cannot find one picture of Khamenei or one headquarter of a Shia militia in any southern city in Iraq, which they used to claim part of Iran, part of the Islamic Republic. And that's a huge change, and I think it's a huge opportunity. Now, the killing of Qasem Soleimani, I'm going to end my speech now. The killing of Qasem Soleimani has created a vacuum that I don't think any other person will fill. I worked with the Shia establishment in Iraq. His clout, his knowledge, his networks, his spending. I was told he has $3 to $4 billion of cash in his back pocket to spend. Somebody else cannot get this kind of money. Somebody else cannot. He even has networks that even his government doesn't know about. And he has a huge influence on the Iraqi Shia establishment, corrupt establishment. Now the mullahs' only stronghold left in Iraq is in Baghdad in the green zone with a few hundred politicians, including as I call it, the Qasem Soleimani parliament, which was handpicked in 2018 in a forged election. I think this is groundbreaking. I kept saying this earthquake will reach Tehran, and it has reached Tehran, and it's going to reach the whole world. And I think we have a very promising future to get rid Iraq of this Iranian hegemony. And if Iran loses Iraq, I think it's very possible the mullahs in Tehran will lose their grip to power. The Iraqi people, since October 1st, have not burned one American flag. They have not burned one Israeli flag. There was never any anti-American chanting, all against Qasem Soleimani and the mullahs. People are chanting against Qasem Soleimani now, even in weddings, and even in university graduations. And this is what has happened. Anyway, thank you very much. I have exceeded my time, and I hope you like it. Thank you. Okay, to answer your question, this Shia mercenary force already existing, Hezbollah is one. Yeah. Look, I learned. Yeah, I learned one thing about the Iranian regime. They are not entrepreneurs, and they are not creative, very creative. They are excellent copycatters. If they try several things, if things works out, they multiply it very quickly. So they wanted to multiply the experiment of Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iraq. The problem, they didn't understand Iraq is different from Lebanon. One difference that I failed to mention in my speech, Iraq is different from Syria, from Lebanon, and from Yemen, because Iraq had 8 years of war. Those did not. And Iran was, as Dr. Walid said, was funding Hezbollah. Iraqi militias, they fund the mullahs, and the mullahs go back and fund a portion of what they send to them. So that's a big difference. In Iraq, there are different tasks for different militias. Katab Hezbollah, which is headed by Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, they are specialized in attacking Americans. And Nujaba specialized in Shia matters, protecting the Shiism. The Asa'ib al-Haq are more specialized in oppressing the people inside Iraq. So what you mentioned is very accurate, and that even make it more difficult to find someone to replace Qasem Soleimani, because this guy is a game on his own. He's a state on his own. He's a state inside the state. I always defined him in Arab media, he was the minister of colonization. He was not the head of Quds Force. You know, I like everybody here to know, if an Iraqi citizen wants to apply for a visa to visit Mashhad for pilgrimage, his visa doesn't go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, goes to the Quds Force. The visas in Iran are issued from Quds Force for Iraqis. But if you apply from Algeria, you go to Ministry of Foreign Affairs because Iraq is considered as a colony that belongs to Qasim Soleimani. The Iranians told me that. They told me, your visas goes to the Quds Force, not the Foreign Ministry. So Zarif is basically a puppet. All the job, all the real business of these four countries, Lebanon, Syria, is in the hand of the Quds Force. And that's why Qasim Soleimani's killing was right on the spot. It's really breaking the back of the regime. I hope that was... can you introduce yourself? Sorry, we didn't know who you are.
I'm Kareem Abdian. I am Ahwazi Arab.
Ahlan wa sahlan. In Iraq is more dramatic than Lebanon because of the level of the violence. So those parties, the Shia Islamic parties, lost their bases, as I said in my speech, in all Shia cities now. This is I almost cannot believe it. It happened in reality. Now in Najaf, in Karbala, in Amara, in Basra may be a little bit more, but Nasriya, there are absolutely no Islamic parties, Shia Islamic parties presence. The mullahs in Tehran lost their power base in Iraq, and they lost their military base. They continue to have proxies, they continue to have spies, and people can commit killing and silencers. They just killed a journalist today, a famous journalist, just an hours ago. But they lost their base. The demonstrators, revolutions do not all, people don't, if you read in history, revolutions do not talk about what's going to happen after. Revolutions about removing what's existing. And then the events will evolve to what's going to happen after. I mean, when the French Revolution happened, people didn't have idea what to do. They just demolished the Bastille prison. And so the same thing in Iraq. They burned, they came now in a new thing. It's almost funny. They bring a shovel machine and they demolish the houses of the Shia members of parliament. They demolish it with a shovel machine. They remove it from the ground in Nasriya and Basra and Amara. And the government cannot control it anymore. And now so basically what you have is, to be honest with you, is not about the constitution. It's not about water and jobs and electricity. It's about Iraqis feel dignified, feel proud of themselves. They can stand. They believe in Shiism. They are hardcore Shias, but they reject the corruption of Islamic parties, which they feel it has nothing to do with the principles of Shiism, of sacrifice and doing the right thing. And this is what is important about it, because it basically, for the first time in 1979, a Shia power base has this kind of level of uprising with this significance. Hezbollah in Lebanon, I don't want to speak on behalf of Dr. Walid, Hezbollah in Lebanon still maintains their which is the different from Iraq. But in Iraq, it's gone. There's no more, and they will never be back. I don't think so.
May I ask a question too? If they're devout Shia, they have to be, following some Ayatollah. Are they secular or are they Shiite?
They are devout Shia, and this is exactly a very good question. There is now a need for emergence of alternative marja'iyah. The current marja'iyah cannot satisfy their demands. They believe in Hussein, and they carry the Hussein flag and the Abbas flag everywhere. But they don't believe in Sistani. They ridicule Sistani now. They hate Muqtada because they don't see them as the protectors, or they are following the steps of Hussein. And that is exactly what we are coming to, a dangerous spot, because you have a vacuum now, and has to be, marja'iyah is important for the Shia. If they don't accept this one, which is clearly they do not accept it now, they don't respect it anymore, we need to have an alternative marja'iyah, and we are working on it.
What about being secular? Do you see any possibility of they become secular or Shiite?
They are secular, but this is part of their ritual of life. This is part of the... Look, these demonstrations are happening the same way they do the Ashura, because the food is cooked and they provide food. So their Shi'ism rituals serve them to make the demonstration successful. It's a habitual, it's a social thing more than religious thing. A culture. Yeah. I think the symbolic effect will be very negative, but I tell you, militarily, the recent people, many people didn't pay attention. The killing of Qasim Soleimani, the boosting in protection, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, it's all done by Marines. And the U.S. have not used one soldier from the ones who are inside Iraq. And I think that was intentional. It was smart, because they don't want to show. First of all, these forces inside Iraq have one task: to fight ISIS, not to protect the embassy. They are special forces. They are specialized in certain tasks, and one single task: to fight ISIS, and obviously force protection. But so all the operations happened by Marines, and even the drone which killed Qasim Soleimani did not come from the drones that the special force. So militarily, I can tell you, it will probably make it easier for the United States to conduct operations against militias in Iraq if there was no forces inside Iraq. Because these forces now are suffering from the problem of force protection and their safety. And it's kind of tying the hands of Washington to take military action inside Iraq. Second of all, the presence of these forces in Iraq are providing legitimacy to the corrupt proxy government in Baghdad, and also giving international support, because all the international coalition will withdraw if the U.S. withdraws. So it's, I mean, I have mixed feelings about it, to be honest with you, but it's not a death or life issue if they leave or if they stay, because for the reasons I mentioned. But it's very important that we saw this operation against Qasim Soleimani, that the U.S. has a red line. Once it's crossed, there's a consequences. When this contractor, and by the way, this contractor is an Iraqi American, a nationalized Iraqi American. So anybody claims that the U.S. does not support or protect Muslims or discriminate against Muslims, it doesn't work this time. I'm sorry. So this guy was a Muslim Iraqi, nationalized, and the U.S. went and killed Qasim Soleimani for him. Good for him.
I'll add one thing about the forces.